Hey, happy Monday, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. I am Nathaniel J, and this is Alive and Thriving. If you're new to the channel, what I do is I read from the life and teachings of the Masters of the Far East. That's currently what I do. I'm also reading from Take Time to Be Holy by Samuel Bringle, and then giving commentary on what these wonderful authors, and in the case of the teachings, what the Masters have to say to humanity. And in case you are also new to this channel, or even if you're not, I just want to welcome you, and I want to say that if you're tuning into this, it's because you were called to. In some way, shape, or form, this message will resonate with you, especially if you identify with a service to others timeline, or you feel like you just want to be more loving and raise your consciousness. The Life and the Teaching of the Masters of the Far East by Baird T. Spalding is a wonderful place to start, or it is a wonderful collection of teachings about the one universal religion to add to your repertoire, to your library, or to your mental collection of teachings on how to be more loving and how to raise that consciousness. So, without further ado, we are on Book 2, Chapter 2, and this is the second part of Chapter 2. It's 7 pages long, and then a couple of paragraphs out of Take Time to Be Holy from April 20th's reading. Happy 420 to all of you. Let's get started. We will suppose it is ice you desire. Would you begin by speaking out the word ice all about you indiscriminately? If you did, you would scatter your forces in all directions and nothing would come to you. You should first form a mental picture of what you desire. Hold it directly in thought just long enough to get the image, then drop the image entirely and look directly into the universal God's substance. Know that the substance is a part of God and therefore a part of you, and in that substance there is everything you need. That God is pressing that substance out to you just as fast as you can use it, and that you can never deplete the supply. Then know that everyone who has created that supply has brought forth from this substance, whether they have done it consciously or unconsciously. Now, with your thought and vision fixed on the one central atom, God, hold that atom until you have imprinted your desire upon it. You will lower the vibration of that atom until it becomes ice. Then all the atoms surrounding that one will hasten to obey your desire. Their vibration will be lowered until they will adhere to the central particle, and in a moment you will have ice. You do not even need any water about you. You need only the ideal. Now, I want to give a little commentary straight out the gate about personal experiences that I have had in meditation training seminars on this very manifestation principle. I was at the Ramtha School of Enlightenment in Yelm, Washington State, and this was a practice that they had us do. Now, to simulate the one atom, or the central atom, we would sometimes use the flame of a candle, the very base where it's like black around the wick and then the fire is coming off around that. Or sometimes we would stare at that black part of the candle, the sort of absence of light, the universal substance represented in that meditative training session, or that object of our attention, and then we would shift our gaze into a mirror and look directly into our own eyes. At other times, we would hold fast to an image that we had drawn with colored pencils, crayons, or you could print one out at your home. But we were particularly holding the vision of our ascended light bodies in our minds by looking at a picture of that we had drawn, and then shifting our gaze away from it to focus on the mirror or just the space in front of us while the whole room was black. And so we would hold that image in mind for a second by literally seeing it and then shift our gaze away. Sometimes we would practice then holding the image, like seeing it, even though we weren't still looking at the picture, and then we would let it fade. And we would do this in order to visualize. We would increase our visualization powers And then the practice was meant to help manifest our ascended light bodies, or the body that we ascend into after third density life. Now I'll continue on with the reading. Again, there was deep silence. In a moment, a picture appeared upon the wall of the room. At first, the forms were still, and we thought but little of it. But then the forms began to move about, and we could see their lips move as they were talking. Immediately, our attention became fixed, and our hostess said, "This picture is depicting a scene that happened long ago, when the Uyghur Empire was at its height. You can see how beautiful the people are, and the country is warm and sunny. You can see how the trees are swayed by the breezes. Even the colors are reproduced. There were no fierce storms to disturb the land or its inhabitants. If you will give close attention, you will hear them speak, and if you can understand the language, you can tell what they are talking about. You can even see the play of the muscles of the body as they move about." Our hostess ceased speaking, but the pictures continued to pour in, with scenes of changing at intervals of about 2 minutes, until we seemed to be a part of the picture. So close did they appear to us. Suddenly, there came a scene with 3 of our party in it. There was no mistaking them. We could hear their voices and recognized what they were talking about. It proved to be an incident that had taken place in South America about 10 years previous. Then our hostess resumed. "We are able to throw thought vibrations into the atmosphere which connect with the thought vibrations of those that have passed, and our vibrations collect those of the thoughts gone before until they draw them together at a given point. Then you are able to see those scenes reproduced just as they were when the scenes occurred. This may seem phenomenal to you, but it will not be long before your people will be producing pictures similar to these you have seen. The only difference is that they will be photographic and mechanical, while ours are neither." The leaders of Christian thought have been so busy with their interdenominational bickerings, each one determined that the other should not succeed, that they have nearly forgotten what true spiritual life means. Likewise, the Oriental people have set themselves so determinedly upon the esoteric, occult, and scientific side of their philosophy that they have also passed over the spiritual. It will come to a point where a few of those who develop the pictures through mechanical means to their higher degree of perfection will be the first to see the true spiritual meaning, the educational value, the benefit to be derived, and the accomplishments that are possible. Then those few will have the courage to step forth and proclaim the accomplishment by the pictures they produce. It will be seen that these devices and the people that develop them now, though to be the most material, will be the greatest power of any factor brought forth and developed by your people in bringing out the true spiritual idea. Thus, it will be left to those who seem to be the most material of the greatest material race to bring forth the truly spiritual. Your people are going on and will bring forth a device which will reproduce the voices of those who have passed, more accurately than they now reproduce the voices of the living. You are going on and will achieve, in a measure, mechanically, what we do with thought force. This is where you are going to excel all the world in future development. Now think about that. We have technology that is able to reproduce the voices of the past, whether they be ghost or phenomenal experiences from people walking around in graveyards with standard recording devices, or more specifically, we are able to recreate individual auras, the light bodies or the light hues that extend away from people depending on their moods, and depending on which level of vibration they are currently occupying within their own light body. I have practiced this. I did extensive work on this in college, reproducing the aura about people with photographic technology and researching it, and even going so far as to get a GDV camera myself, which stands for gas discharge, I forget the V part, but it recreates and maps out human auras and lets you know where you are within your own light body and which of your energy centers are in or out of balance, depending on time of day, consumption of food, energies that you're feeling, inspiration, predispositions, and thought patterns. It is truly just like the masters predicted at the turn of the century in these books that we would have this technology. So that's prophetic, and it has come to pass. The founding of America portrays the white race's homecoming as that land is their former home and one of the places where the great early spiritual enlightenment was brought forth. Thus, it is the land where the greatest spiritual awakening will take place. In a short time, you will be far ahead of the whole world in physical and mechanical development. You will go on and develop the physical and mechanical until it is perfected to such a degree that you will see there is but one more step to the spiritual. When that time comes, you will have the courage to take the step. There is a saying in your country that necessity is the mother of invention. Necessity placed you in a position where you were obliged to do that which seemed impossible. Your mode of accomplishment has made you a very material nation. With your mode of living, this has been necessary in order to survive. When you, as a nation, do touch the spiritual realm, the strides that you have made in the material will seem like child's play. With the strong physical bodies and quick perception you have developed, your race will become a light to all other nations, and you will look back and wonder, as you are now looking back and wondering, why your forefathers used the stagecoach and the tallow candle when steam and electricity were all around them, just as it is around you today. Had they abided by the law, they would have received and benefited as you have and will. You will find that the spiritual surrounds and is above the material. You will find that in the spiritual there is a higher law, and when you abide by that law, you receive the benefit. For the spiritual is just above and around the mechanical or material. You will find there is no more mystery in the spiritual than there is in the mechanical or the material. The things that appear difficult to you now will be simple, and you will surmount them just as readily as you are now surmounting the mechanical and material. It is the continual striving that does the work. Now, I think that most people tuning into this channel can appreciate what a hard day's labor or work is like. And we have all known what it is like to succeed materially and mechanically by the sweat of our own brow. And I also think that a lot of the people who tune into this channel are those who are actively using now the spiritually higher laws to manifest their means of livelihood, abundance, prosperity, joy, and happiness. That being said, let me know in the comment section below if this is you, and not only that, but what that process has been like for yourself. Because for me, it really is now about learning these subtle kind of guidelines and ways to use the higher spiritual laws for manifesting abundance, for sustaining happiness and joy, for calming the mind, for releasing tension and anxiety, and for really finding the deep meditative states when I'm not only just in meditation, but when I am going about my day-to-day life. Let me know what that has been like for you. Our hostess went on By this time, the old gentleman whom I spoke of before had selected and brought out a tablet and placed it on a nearby easel. Our hostess went on to say, "The great error which many people make is that they do not look upon the lessons as a means of attaining a given end. They do not realize that, when that end is attained and fully recognized, the lessons are to be discarded and the attainment is to be followed. Then, if they still wish to go on, they may pause for a moment and place what they have accomplished in their storehouse, sometimes called the subconscious, and after this step, the lessons leading to the further attainment which they seek may be taken up. But as soon as the goal is reached, they must again discard the lessons. In this way, they may go on, step by step, to the higher attainment. You will find that lessons are but steps in the stairway, and if you were to attempt to carry all the steps you have used to reach the top, the load would soon crush you. Besides, there would be no steps for your brother to use as he follows on. Leave the steps for him to use as he chooses. They have assisted you to reach the top. You do not need them any longer. You may pause a moment for breath or for a fresh inspiration to go on. The moment that inspiration has come, you can place your foot upon the next step and again place the attainment in the storehouse. Let go of all the lessons that brought you there, and there is nothing to encumber or hold you back. But if you look back to the lesson and do not hold your vision on the goal, you will, before you realize it, have fixed the lessons instead of the ideal the lessons would convey. They may cause you to waver and look back and say, "Did my ancestors accomplish this in the same way I have accomplished?" When I look far back, I can say they did, but when I look into the immediate future, I say they did not, for they accomplished by the sweat of their brow, while you are using your own God-given powers. If you look back to your ancestors, you will, before you realize it, be worshiping them. For with your creative ability, you will have brought forth that which you have gazed upon. You will be living by their standards instead of your own. You will begin to look like your ancestors, but you will not accomplish what they have accomplished. You will begin to drop back, for if you live by another's ideal, you cannot accomplish that which the one who conceived the ideal accomplished. You must either go on or return. There are no halfway measures. Now, I'm going to take one break here and say that this viscerally happened to me when I came back from South America to North America. While I was in South America, I made many spiritual advances, and I did store them in my subconscious, the storehouse, if you will, and I will never forget the teaching while I was down there that says, one who has made advances in Krishna consciousness, because I was studying with Vaishnavist monks, Krishna, Christos, they all stem from the same word, meaning Kristala, or the Sanskrit Kristala, which is literally talking about the Christ energy, okay? Talking about the only begotten. In the beginning, there was singularity or intelligent awareness, and then that intelligent awareness got lonely, and it created intelligent energy. And the energy is then what went out and began the creation process. The intelligent energy is what we are talking about when we talk about the Christ energy, the unconditional love. Because the unconditional awareness, or the infinite awareness, was unconditional love, and it is the thing that it also gave to the intelligent energy other than movement. So you have movement and unconditional love, and that is the Christ energy, and it goes forth, and it is the energy that all shall come to, quote unquote, the Father by. Now you have to be able to get to that level of attainment before you get back to oneness, intelligent awareness, okay? Infinite intelligent awareness. So anyways, I was in South America and I did make advances in this consciousness, and those were stored in the storehouse. It is what is now giving me the ability to kind of come back after literally having fallen back onto the ways of my ancestors, which was to work by the sweat of my brow. When I came back from South America, I had some support. I had a place to live and there was food on the table. But the modality, the mentality of the people who I lived with and was around was a very sweat of your brow mentality. So I did fall back on that, and in order to kind of get myself to where I am today, I continued to do things the way that my ancestors had done them, which was to work very, very hard and put in very long hours. Now, at a certain point in 2019, I said, that's not the only way that I want to do this. I'm aware of intelligent infinity. I'm aware of using thought energy to manifest abundance. So I did start to use affirmations and got back into the meditation scene and really then harnessed the power of both hard work and affirmations and manifesting abundance using thought energy, and the results were spectacular. I'm hoping to replicate them this year and then just to continue it going on in ever increasing abundance. Nonetheless, what they just talked about here, I did fix my attention on the ways of my ancestors, and then that is what I became essentially for a while until I shifted my gaze back onto the teachings, and now I am trying to be here and now fully focused on the teachings. And like I've talked about in other videos, it's not easy, and it certainly is for everyone. I hope that everyone would do this. But the reality is that around 20% of human race might actually take up these teachings, might actually do this work for themselves, and I just endeavor to be one of them, to raise my consciousness and to be more loving. There are no halfway measures. This ancestor worship is one of the direct causes of nations degenerating. Because of your lack of ancestor worship, we see a great nation in store for you. You had, in the first place, very little pride of ancestry. You had no ancestors to worship, and you had no foundation save that which you made. Your ideal was a free country, and you brought forth your ideal. The country you acquired had been free from king or ruler. To you, it did not matter how your grandfather had accomplished. It was how you, your own individual self, would accomplish. Then you united with the many to accomplish one purpose, and the individual self in you, the creative power that gives you life, God, held you in direct communion with your ideal power to create. Then, with your eyes steadfastly fixed on the attainment, you are going on to the realization of your ideal. Our hostess turned to the tablet and resumed. On these tablets it is recorded that God was called directive principle, head, mind, and was symbolized by the character which is like your letter M, which was called Mo. This translated into your language would be director or builder. This directive principle was over and controlled all. The first being he created was called the expression or the directive principle, and he was created in form just like the principle, as the principle had no form, but his own to express by or through. This being, which the directive principle created, was the outer expression of the principle himself. He was created in the image of the principle, as the directive principle had no other form to pattern after. The directive principle gave to his creation every one of his attributes, and this creation had access to everything that the principle had. He was given dominion over every other form. He had the form of his creator, the attributes of his creator, and the power to express all of them in the perfect way that the creator expresses, so long as the creation held itself in direct accord with the principle. None of the attributes of the created being were developed by the Creator. Having in mind the ideal or perfect plan which his creation was to express, placed his creation in ideal or perfect surroundings where all the attributes could be brought forth and expressed or brought into outer manifestation. Thus, the Creator did not place his creation upon earth until all the conditions for its perfect development were complete. When these conditions were complete, this being was placed among them and named Lord God, and the location where he was placed was called Mo, or M, and afterward became known as the cradle or mother. I wish you to observe that I am putting this into words in your language so that you can understand them. You can go into the details later after you have learned to translate the tablets yourselves. I wish to bring these points out so that they may become the principles from which you shall work in translating these records. I do not wish you to think that I am attempting to change any conclusions you have already formed in other ways or through other thoughts or studies. I am going to ask you to lay them all aside for the time. When you have gone deeper into these studies, you are at liberty to take up all others again if you wish. I do not wish to influence you in any way. All lessons are but the outer, a way of arriving at a conclusion. If the conclusion is not reached or the aim sought is not attained, the lessons become driftwood, extra baggage, nothing. Wonderful. So what I was talking about in like my third commentary there about the intelligent awareness, infinite intelligent awareness, creating the perfect directive and it having all of the attributes of the intelligent awareness was spot on. I'm not tooting my own horn or anything, but that is generally the teaching that comes from all of the higher mystery schools. So it is a universal message, and the reason why I bring it up again is because I learned about this through various different teachers. So everybody is communicating the same thing. So it truly is a one universal religion, a one universal language, with the masters going as far as to say that there is no higher religion than truth. In the 9 Faces of Christ, it says the very same thing. Joseph says to Joseph Bar Joseph, Yeshua, Jesus, that there is no higher religion than truth. So it just really does then have to be that way. It can't be the way that mankind set things up through the long dark ages with multiple different religions aspiring to have an ultimate truth which was different from their neighbors. Just like the different sects of Christianity have varying or competing, to a certain degree, ideologies. And then you just basically see people being people and competing to supplant one of the other forms of competition, if you will. The 20% or hopefully more, however many more people really do begin to practice truth and meditation and spiritual attainment, they will ultimately come upon these teachings. They will ultimately come upon the scientific, if you will, explanations for how this whole thing works and what is God and how can we use it to our benefit as beings created in the likeness and the image thereof. This is really truly wonderful news if you've watched this video today this far and if you're actively practicing these principles, because it means that not only are you on the right path, but you are awakened. You are on the path to the ultimate attainment, the thing that the soul ultimately wants, which is reunion with the one infinite creator. Okay, I thank you from the bottom of my heart for tuning in to Life and Teachings of the Masters of the Far East, Chapter 2, Part 2, and I will conclude this video today with the reading from Take Time to Be Holy that I just uploaded. Let me just find it really quickly. Let me refresh this page. This is so great. I have a screen directly below the camera now. So when I'm reading, I'm not looking down, and I'm able to find the readings, just bring them right up. It's really cool. And then synchronistically, when I started scanning the pages into my drive to get ready for this video, it was 1:07 p.m. Eastern Time. And then when I started the recording, it was 1:17 p.m. Eastern Time. And the section from the Bible that this April 20th reading comes from Psalm 116:16. So there are times when I see 116. There are also times when I see 118, and then occasionally 119. So synchronicity is at play today, let me assure you. So, April 20th, filled with resurrection power, you have loosed my bonds. Psalm 116:16. A brilliant young minister opened his heart and told me what an awful struggle he was having with fleshly temptations. He had been reconciled to God by death of Jesus, but he had not been saved to the uttermost by his life. After having the way of holiness explained to him, he yielded himself to Jesus, received him by faith, and found himself filled with resurrection power. Some weeks later he wrote, I have burned the last bridge behind me and am all under the blood. Oh, what weeks these have been since I saw you, such as I have never believed could be realized this side of heaven. A revival broke out in his church, and nearly all the leading members got sanctified, while many wayward souls were saved. A year later, there was a second revival, with scores of people flocking to the Lord. Many years have now passed, and the fire still burns in that minister's heart. He received the very same life and spirit that the disciples received in the upper room on the day of Pentecost. And it is for you too. Jesus' life and power is your portion. Rise up in glad faith before him and claim it now. So the message coming through with a slightly different distortion, and I mean just like if I'm talking this direction, this one's kind of coming off like that. I don't mean the distortion in a negative connotation. It's just coming through here, and one of the things that can be very confusing to initiate Christians or the uninitiate Christians is the whole using the name of Jesus over and over again instead of words like the creative directive or things like logos or unconditional love or spirit. It can be very easy, like the masters talk about in the life and teaching, to begin to worship the idol and not the ideal. But if you read this passage and you are able to interpret when they say Jesus, your mind is thinking about the ideal that Jesus emulated, well then you are again affirming your own awakeness, your own unity and progression down the path, and you should be able to in that moment celebrate your own levels of attainment and give thanks for having your mind opened up from the dogma and the ritualism that a passage like this one might otherwise engender in the mind of the uninitiate. Now, if you do identify yourself as the uninitiate, and if this video, or me using those words right there, if you strongly hold to know it's only Jesus that is the life, the way, and the truth, that those who wish to come to the Father shall come by, then I implore you to dive further into the life and teachings of the Masters of the Far East and attain for yourself the same level of realization that we who have been along the path for slightly longer or have had our third eye open a little bit wider have come to. That is that when Jesus spoke those words, he was speaking as the logos of the solar system or the logos of the galaxy, the representative of the universal source in the flesh, because he had received a very high level of personality transparency, meaning that his body was the physical conduit through which the universal mind was able to express unto humanity while he was speaking those words that then got recorded into the Bible, or translated and recorded in what we now call today's Bible. That it was not the one and only Jesus saying that you have to place all your faith in me, Jesus, in order to attain this level, because as Jesus goes on to say in Dr. Samuel Brown's work, a name is nothing but a name. And then as Jesus spoke in Life and Teaching of the Master of the Far East, when he spoke those words, he was wishing to convey that it is the logos, the unconditional love aspect of God that he was speaking as when he spoke those words, and that if you wish to attain what he had attained, that you had to place, as the masters say, you have to place your point of consciousness, your attention on the unconditional love, on the actual source itself, the ideal as they call it, and then you will attain it likewise. It's not that you have to worship Jesus as an idol, but worship the ideal that Jesus was embodying. Namaste. Thank you for watching.